Thank you for the kind introduction, Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency the Mayor, friends, ladies and gentlemen, and young people from the school. I'm delighted to have everyone here. Today I want to really leave you with three thoughts at the end of the day. Number one, which you have mentioned, sir, and so has the Mayor, is that sustainability and green economy is not just about forests and wild animals. It's about the economy. So I wish to talk about that. The second thought that I want to address with you is that when we talk innovation, and that's in the title of today's talk, innovation is not just about technology, it's also about society. It's social innovation that is sometimes as important as technological innovation. And one which is happening right now is that, do people see these logos out here? There's University of Guyana, there's UN Environment, WWF, and Conservation International. I am proud, and you should be proud, that Guyana is so far the only country where I see these two logos together on the same page, CI and WWF. So, well done, Aisha and colleagues from CI. Yeah. And I want to see more of this, yeah? So please, this is a good thing. That's social innovation as I see it. That's right. The third thing what I want to leave you with is, what is it that makes natural farming successful? You know, I come from India. Dr. Swaminathan, who has been to Guyana as well maybe 40 years ago or 30 years ago, taught a particular style of farming which was chemical intensive, pesticides and fertilizers. And it worked for a while until soil quality declined and the soil really could not produce because it had been killed. Everything living, microbes, funguses, nematodes, worms, everything in the soil was basically dead thanks to the chemicals. And then you have something that doesn't work for plants. Around the world, natural farming is evolving. It's going back to, okay, can we get this cycle reversed? Can we get this working? So I want to leave you with exactly how this happens, because there is a technology here as well, even though it may sound simple, but there is a lot of technique involved here. So these are the three things that I wish to talk about today. And I will weave them into the story of sustainable agriculture. Those of you who have families who come back many generations ago from India, they may have heard of a state in India called Andhra Pradesh. So I will talk about specifically that example because I've been there many times. So, but generally towards what is the big challenge that we are trying to sort out? So today we say, and I've seen this comment from the UN, United Nations head, and from the UNEP and so many people, today's food systems are broken. What do they mean when they say that? What they are saying is that we have failures in child nutrition. Children are being developed who are stunted physically as well as mentally because what they are eating is not healthy. There's a lot of subsidies going into wheat, rice and sugar, and diets in the developing world are generally focused more on those carbohydrates and less on the other nutrients. So therefore they are developing unhealthy children who are not able to think as well as they can. Hunger is still a problem. 800 million people around the world still go to bed hungry. Obesity is a problem. Around 2 billion people in the world are overweight, out of which 650 million are obese. So you have 800 million, 650 million suffering because of basically bad systems for food. Then we have food-related diseases. If you look at diabetes, one of the big contributors is sugar and the lack of control on sugar. And diabetes, my friends, today affects not just 100 million people like it did in 1970, it affects 430 million people. 430 million people, just imagine. This is like 500 times your entire population in the world who are affected by diabetes, right? And it's costly. It costs something like $850 billion every year to handle this because it's about $2,000 per person. So these are some of the problems. And of course, people talk about climate and, usually when they talk about climate, they say, oh yes, we have read the Stern review of climate change and, agriculture accounts for 14%. But no, that is just farming that accounts for 14%. But when in Brazil you destroy the rainforest to create the field that grows the soya or feeds the cattle, that is also farming. It's because of the same system. So you have to account for that 17%. And then you process the food and the manufacturing and the transportation, taking things from Brazil to India, China, USA, wherever, and so on. If you account for all of that, and then the waste, 1/3 of the food that is grown is actually wasted, and it's waste on the field, waste in the markets, and waste at home. And if you account for that, the total amount of climate emissions that are coming from the food system is not 14%, my friends. It is between 47 and 53%. These are the estimates latest. So there is no solution to climate without looking at agriculture. So actually when people talk about green as climate or talk about green as forest, I just smile and tell them, really, you really want to focus on that? Is that what's going to solve your problem? No. It is about food and agriculture. Okay. Freshwater is 70 to 90%, depending on country to country. 70 to 90% of the water that is being used for farming. It's actually used to grow crops. And of course, I could go on, but the point is these are big issues, and these are all related to the food system. The food and agriculture side of the economy is actually the single biggest reason why we are today not a sustainable economy. And people, again, think about how many of you have seen or heard about SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals? Yes, a few people have heard. So these are 17 goals which were created in 2014 for countries to follow so that they can achieve better economies, more social equity, better wealth and better health and so on. But people think of food and agriculture as being SDG number 2. But I remind them, why is it only 2? Because you have also, food is grown on the land. If you don't have land managed properly, life on earth, SDG 14, that won't work. And unless you have oceans providing you the fish that give the protein for 1 billion people in the developing world, how will that work? So SDG 15. And climate is changing everything in terms of crop productivity. So SDG 13. And water, SDG 6. And then there's health, SDG 3. You go on like this, you can find actually half the SDGs are connected with the food and agriculture system. It's not just one. This is how important it is. And there is a big problem, and I know that my friends in Guyana have experienced this in the case of sugar, but commodity farming is going down, both in terms of its usefulness in the economy and in terms of its cost in terms of climate emissions. And most of the climate emissions today come from these big sectors, beef and soya and palm oil, especially in Indonesia and Malaysia. But the good side is that agriculture and the food system is actually the world's largest employer. The world is 7 billion people. Out of that, about 3.5 or 3.2 are employed. And out of that, 40% of the employment is provided by agriculture and food systems. When we talk about economy and let us industrialize to get more jobs, I sometimes laugh. I say, what are you talking about? The total number of jobs in the car industry worldwide is only 15 million. The total in the steel sector is 6 million. The total in the IT sector, famous IT sector from India, is 7 million. Worldwide, total employment. And when my economist friends in India say that, we are going to solve India's problems through manufacturing, and so I'm saying, hang on, you have 250 to 260 million people who are employed in small-scale farming. How many global IT sectors and global steel sectors and global car sectors are you going to create inside India to solve this problem? It is not possible. Please try and focus on what is possible, which is a better smallholder farm, economically stronger smallholder farms, because here smallholder means less than 2 hectares. In these small farms, we are employing more than 1 billion people around the world. It is huge. This is absolutely the key challenge of our times. So, coming to smallholder farms, here's what we have learned, here's what the knowledge has been brought to us by many researchers, is that they are really significant because they are solutions for hunger, for poverty, for employment, and for ecosystem services, for ecosystems also. And why? Because 1 billion people are employed here on whose work, the livelihoods of children and parents and so on, 2.6 billion depends. These small farms, even though they are small, collectively they are very big. So they do consist of 60% of the total land that is growing food for us on the planet. And not only that, but actually where they are growing food, it is largely in the developing world. It's not the big farms in Australia and Canada and the USA that are growing, that I'm talking about. I'm talking about where there is employment. The farms in Australia and Canada and the USA, they use manufactured capital, they use machinery, they are largely mechanized. Large-scale mechanization exists. Smallholders are not there. Smallholders are in our kind of countries, in India, in China as well, even though they have industrialized agriculture, Southeast Asia, Africa, some parts of Latin America, and so on. And the good news here is that if we focus on techniques for improving small-scale agriculture and sustainably increasing them, not just for 2 years or 5 years and then the whole thing collapses, sustainable increase in yields in small farms can actually improve incomes in the most powerful way. They say that if you increase yields by 10%, that gives you a 7% reduction in poverty in Africa and a 5% reduction in Asia. They say, based on the research that we have studied, is that an increase in yields on average across a massive study was done in 2006 and again in 2010, which looked at small farms around the world. It was in 55 countries, and they looked at more than 11 million farms, and this was just statistical gathering, data gathering, and they saw pre-intervention and post-intervention changes in yields. And the average increase in yields, my friends, is staggering. 80%, 79%, 80% higher yield. Yeah. So you must be wondering, like, why doesn't everyone change? There is a reason why. Because to change, you need to stop using pesticides, stop using fertilizers, you need to redesign your farm. So number one who is unhappy is the pesticide company. Number two who's unhappy is the fertilizer company. They are very powerful people, so we have to watch out. So, and of course, number three, you are also unhappy because you have to learn new ways. And as the mayor was saying, change is always difficult. It is easy, sir, as you were also saying. It's easy to continue to do what you are doing. It is more difficult to change. So therefore, it's not what I'm describing to you is possible, but I'm not suggesting it is easy. It cannot just, from tomorrow I will start doing it different. You're right, it will take time. It will take learning, and let me show how that time and that learning actually happens. So I come to my favorite example, which is, there are many examples of this, but to me really the favorite one is from Andhra Pradesh, which is a state in India which is a little, it reminds me of Guyana actually, because there's a coastline is there, all this. There are lots of rivers, there are two major rivers, the Godavari and the Krishna, who have basins out there. So do you. So basically, and it's about 400 miles long, the coastline, which is roughly the length of your coastline as well. So there are many similarities geologically in that sense. Of course, you don't have shifting sands and so on in Andhra Pradesh. But the good news there is that their ex-chief secretary, the man who was in charge of the government, Mr. Vijay Kumar, was trying for a long time as chief secretary to make this change, but his own agriculture department did not listen to him. So he went to his chief minister and said, I will start on my own using my self-help groups, the women's self-help groups that he had created, and I will try and change the agricultural model using them. And he got the blessing of Chandrababu Naidu, who was the chief minister, and he proceeded. He started a new institution and a new network, and let me describe to you their success story. So this is called ZBNF, so-called Zero Budget Natural Farming. Why ZBNF? Why zero budget? Because you are spending zero on pesticides and you are spending zero on fertilizers, hence zero budget. And the two big crops in Andhra Pradesh are actually rice and peanuts, groundnuts as they call it. But they also have a lot of chili, red chili, which is very valuable, high value crop. They grow fruit, papaya, pomegranate, and mangoes are the main fruits that are grown there. And they grow turmeric, they grow maize, and so on, and they grow sugarcane. So all of these things are grown there, actually. And the basic logic that is being used in this model is like this, and this is what I said. I will be talking to you about what is it that succeeds, and what are they doing differently. So they are working on the basis that, look, firstly, you don't need to, the whole of the soil is actually minerals, right? So those who are in school or at university, you are studying, if any of you are studying geology or you are studying biology, you would know this. The soil is nothing but minerals. So there is enough potassium, there is enough nitrogen, there is enough calcium, there's enough everything in the soil. The problem is, it's not in a form in which the plant can eat it. So what the plant has to do is to actually figure out ways of feeding the system of organisms inside the soil. Bacteria, funguses, nematodes, worms, they have to be fed. So on average, what a plant does, it exudes, it pushes into the soil. 40% of the food that it makes in the leaves is actually being pushed into the soil by the plant through its root systems, right? So people, how many of you knew this already from the school, from Martins, who knew this already? That 40% of the food that the plant makes on average in its leaves is being pushed back into the soil, right? Because people don't teach this. Okay, so please go back and tell your teachers that why don't they teach you this? This is a very important point. Why? Is the plant doing this because it is mad? Is it doing it because it's crazy? No, it's doing it because that food, yes, is necessary to feed the bacteria, to feed the funguses, to feed the nematodes, that big army of creatures in the soil, which will then convert the minerals into compounds and dissolve them or suspend them in water, which can then, through osmosis, be sucked back into the root systems of the plant, go up through the trunk into the leaves, and become part of the new cells, and therefore the plant will grow. So the plant needs to do that. It needs to feed the system that is feeding it. And this is the way life works. This is what I meant about agriculture is about biology. You know, sir, and madam and everyone, we don't teach our children the details of how agriculture works. We don't teach our children, and this is our biggest failing, including me. So I have corrected my ways. I have actually taught my children now, said, hang on, what you learned, incorrect. Please listen to this, read this paper, read that paper, find out this, and so on. So we need to do this. We need to re-educate our children, otherwise they will make the same mistakes that we have made in our times. So this is the number one learning. How do we get the bacteria, the funguses, the nematodes, and the worms back into the soil to do the job that they were there to do in the first place? And how can they what can we do to make them do it actually better than average? Like how can we get their densities higher and manage the system? So this is the approach. I'll describe the various techniques in a moment, but one interesting thing is that relearning thing, and you mentioned, sir, that it will take time. Here's why it will take time. Because you need to teach all this, right? And in fact, this example from Andhra Pradesh is is funded partly by the government of Andhra Pradesh and partly by a donor who is the owner of the company called Wipro. They are in fact, they are India's #1 IT company. They're in fact bigger than Infosys. They are bigger than Tata Technology Services. So Azim Premji Foundation is a donor. They've donated $17 million. The government has given grant of $110 million. So together with that $125 million for 5 years period, this project has begun. And sir, what is the #1 expenditure of this project? It is an interesting thing. Teaching. So when a village or an area develops the method and they are successful, the next thing is to convince 2 or 3 of the best natural farmers to actually move from her village or his village to a village 10 miles away, 20 miles away, maybe 100 miles away. Move, and then of course they cannot grow food in their own village, so their income is lost. So they have to earn that income, and you have to pay them salaries. So they become the master farmers in another village and start teaching it all over again. Salaries are the largest component of this expenditure. And that is an interesting thing, right? It is about human capital, developing human capital, as we call it, developing skills, paying for those skills, and using those skills to be taught in other farms. And the benefits are huge. We are getting lower costs. The risks are going down. The farm is always subject to risk, climate risk, rainfall risk, soil fertility, heat waves, this, that, and the other. And the resilience of the crops increases. So they are less likely to die as a result of shortfall of water, less likely to die during heat waves. So resilience against drought conditions also improves. And there are other benefits because this is 100% chemical free. So health is not a problem here. In fact, it is good for health. And I remember when I used to keep asking this question. I've been there 3-4 times. I would always ask, and they would translate the question saying, I would ask the question, what is the main reason why you are farming like this? What is the main driver? And answer was always the same. It is, sir, they would say health. And then I would say, explain, what do you mean health? He says, no, see, first, the soil health is better because you can see, they pick up mud and they'd show me there's some earthworms here. Soil health is better. Then they would say, see, we have never had now, since we have done this, there have been no more problems of pesticide-related disease. Kidney problems and all which take place, that has stopped happening. So we don't have any new cases of that. And thirdly, sir, when you eat our food, your health will be better. They would tell me. So there were three ways in which health is improved: soil, farmers, and the consumers. Yeah. Here are some pictures that I took myself on some of. I think this was last year actually, but it was maybe in December last year. I'd gone there, and this was a visit where we actually went down, and I saw the practice in terms of the things that they make. So on the top left-hand side, there is a lady there who's on a stall. In that stall, she has all of those organic inputs that they use. So they use cow urine and cow dung, and then they mix it for a while. For 3 days, they keep it with gram flour and molasses. So basically jaggery and molasses to feed the bacteria so that they can multiply. And this becomes like a potent mixture. You have to use it within a few days. You can't keep it for long, but they keep it, they sell it. So there's a small business set in the village. Each village has a small shop like that where they are pulling together. And then they have on the right-hand bottom something called neem astram, which means they are taking the neem leaf. The neem is a tree called the Azadirachta indica. It has an amazing ability that it repels insects. It actually makes... You have here, of course, you have neem here, yes. So these people, they make that mulch, they kind of mix it with water, they make a massive mulch, as you can see, a big drum, and then they will sell it. They will put it into small bottles and sell it, and or small cans, and then that mulch is then mixed with water and sprayed. This is basically, it's a pesticide. Repellent, it's an insect repellent, so it's a pesticide. In some of the smaller villages, they just do it on a communal basis, community basis, so they create it and everyone can use the same thing. So these are some examples, and that is my friend Vijay Kumar, the man on the left in the right-hand picture. He's talking to his farmers. So this is a picture I took, which was on a later visit. This was early in February this year, and I was very impressed with this young lady. So she is in India from a scheduled caste. Now I don't know how much anyone knows about scheduled caste. Means they are the lowest caste. Mahatma Gandhi tried to do a lot. Yes, exactly. Means they are not part of the caste system. They are scheduled caste. So she is the poorest section, the most neglected. So she's from there. She was landless, means her family, and she had no land. So she borrowed money from the women's cooperative, rented the land, started her farming, and became so good that she has now become a master farmer. And now here she is speaking to us on the panel and to the various, and you can see most of the audience is men actually. So it was quite interesting to see a young lady talking like beaming with confidence. You can just see that sort of energy in her, beaming with confidence and happiness at her success, the fact that she had achieved this and that it was her success. And that is just, one of the images which really will last with me. It's in my head, so I don't need the picture now. So she is describing her experience. And the beauty is, this area where we held this conference is in the West Godavari district. Now, the West Godavari district is special for the people of India because this is where the so-called green revolution, which was not green, actually began. In the same place where chemical pesticides and chemical fertilizers were introduced as the way to improve farming, my friends, in the same district, now the same farmers, children and grandchildren are saying, no, we made a mistake. Look how we are doing it here. Now there's a new system. Use biology, don't use chemistry. And this is in the birthplace of the Green Revolution. This is where Dr. Swaminathan and the local farmers started their first experiment. This is how much things have changed today. How do we know this is better? Through measurement. So these are examples of what we call crop cutting experiments, where you take areas 5 meter by 5 meter square and you actually measure. And these are two areas which are both growing ragi, which is a finger millet, which is a local grain, and they are both growing it, and you have to take measurements. The one on the right hand side is literally these two fields are within about 300 meters of each other. So one is still continuing in the old style and the other one is new style agriculture, yeah. And so you take a crop, you cut all that, you weigh it, and then you say, okay, how much is it? And you do it again after 6 months, and the next year you repeat it and so on. So these crop cutting experiments have been done for 5 meter by 5 meter size blocks. They use this sort of red plastic tape to make the area, to measure whether it is working or not. And you can see that in the zero budget natural farming crop, the yield is higher. It's 2.8 tons per hectare compared to 1.6 tons per hectare in the case of the normal, what you call, they call it normal, but I'm saying it is chemical farming. It's not natural farming. And you can see sometimes visibly, this is interesting, this is basically what happened as a result of a drought during that period. You can see that on the left-hand side, this is 48 days old crop, but it's green. Whereas on the right-hand side, a field, again, hardly half a kilometer away from there, a different farmer, 45 days old crop, and you can see the difference. It is dry. The soil hasn't been able to retain whatever moisture is there. Groundnut, as I mentioned, is very important. It's the second largest crop after rice in this state. And again, you can visibly, you can see the results. You don't have to go for the crop cutting. You can just see it. You can see that the pods per plant in the zero budget side are 25 to 30 pods of peanuts, whereas in the other one it's more 10 to 15 pods. And these are the four techniques, the four basic techniques. They all use, see, you go from location to location, you will find regional variations. But the four basic techniques they are using is, one, make sure the maximum biomass. So make sure that you use the cow dung and the cow urine, but use it as inoculant. Feed it, grow it, and increase its volume in terms of bacteria, microbes, and so on, and then spray it onto the soil. So the cow dung is used not as a fertilizer. We are not making compost from it. Maybe first round they might do some compost just to put some minerals back. But mostly what they're doing is using it as an inoculant to be able to inject bacteria literally into the soil by just throwing it down. So it's used as a bio-inoculant, not as a fertilizer as such. And then the biology starts converting the soil into food for the plant. The second thing they are doing, which is very smart, is that not all seeds will survive, and they are saving their seeds. How to know which one is going to survive, and to ensure that they do survive, they already coat it with the cow dung and urine. So the seeds are bacterially coated so that those that survive, they are strong, and that becomes also a microbial coating for the seeds. Third thing that they do is never waste any green matter. Everything. So they are multi-cropping. So they are growing like in the same field. You will find rows and rows. At the lowest level, there will be red gram or black gram. Next to it will be chilies, which is about this high. Then next to it, they'll be growing some crop, maybe maize, rows of maize. Then next to that, there'll be fruit trees. There'll be there'll be pomegranate trees, which are this high, and then papaya trees, very tall. So all of this, and then repeat, again, the same 5 crops, repeat like that. So of course, all the crops finish at different times of the year. So as soon as the red gram and the black gram dies, chop it up, mix it, and use it for the mulching for everything else. When the chili is harvested, cut it, chop it, mix it, mulch it, and use it for all the others, and so on and so on. So this keeps going on. So when you walk in their fields, a Western person walking there might think, my God, how messy this is, There's mulch everywhere. This is the purpose for the mulch. It is to keep the moisture in the soil and to give the worms something to eat, right? Because they also need food. That is the purpose of the mulch. You will find these fields looking completely different. I can just imagine some English agronomist or American agronomist saying, man, this is dirty here. So yeah, my friend, is not dirty here. This is life. This is the whole point. Biology. It's not chemistry. Yeah. So that's the difference. So, and the fourth thing is botanical pest control we just discussed. You mentioned that there is already neem in Guyana. So this neem is actually well known. China has been very successfully using it. Tobacco leaves are also used for certain formulations. Mixtures of these are also used. So there are actually more than 200 different botanicals across the state which are being used for this. So, and people keep trying variations to do their own variations. Yeah. So what are the results? Well, these crop cutting experiments, as I described to you, have actually been going on for several years now, since 2016. And here are some key results. Groundnut, irrigated groundnut, definitely improved. 29% higher yield. Cost of cultivation down because there is no more pesticides, and therefore the net profit per hectare is 40,000 rupees. 40,000 rupees is about $600. So you can think for a farmer in India, a poor farmer in India, having maybe 1 hectare, to get an extra $6,000 is US dollars is pretty good thing. It's a really good thing. Black gram, not at such a big difference, but still positive. Maize, again positive, but the superb one is chilies because it's a cash crop, it's a high value crop. The yield is so much higher as a result of the zero budget natural farming, 10,000 kilograms per hectare as against 7,500 kilograms. That 30% increase in yield is basically 1 lakh rupees extra in income, 100,000 rupees. That's a lot of money for a small farmer, right? So this is making them happy, and this is when I was invited to the official launch of the project. Official launch was when they already had 180,000 farmers. So obviously it is not the real launch. This is the politically official launch. But Chandrababu Naidu was there, and he was inspiring as always. He said something very eloquent and simple. He says, when I go to the zero budget natural farming farmers and the fields, I see happy farmers. And then he says, I want every farmer in my state to be happy. My friends, there are 6 million farmers in his state. Today, he has only seen 350,000 farmers who are happy. Can you imagine? This is the scale of his political ambition. He wants the entire state to be converted to zero budget natural farming. Hats off to this man. I mean, he is quite remarkable. Same with rice. So rice, in the state, they grow 8 different varieties, and these are the measures of different yields. As you can see, there's the zero budget versions are always higher yield yielding more compared to the others. Of course, the difference can be small, can be large, but it's usually better. And this is the staple crop, so I think it makes a difference. Here, I would argue that the cost saving or the income yield is not the main reason. You're doing this because you will get healthier and better rice. And finally, which I hope Guyana, when it tries this, can succeed better than India. See, we have not, in this state, succeeded in branding this. It is not yet branded as organic. So these prices that you are seeing is basically Whatever the price is in the local market, it's the local market price. It's not a higher price. You know, when we go to Safeway or Marks and Spencer in the UK or wherever, if you go to these fancy stores, it's always the organic is branded and it's nicely shown, and it's, it's more expensive. And some of the benefit is going to the farmer. That's not happening here. So I am trying to explain to them that, look, this is great, wonderful what you're doing here, and please keep doing it, but you can earn more by branding this and exporting this. And I hope that when this begins in Andhra Pradesh, in Guyana as well, the same will apply. So there are some invisible benefits and there are some invisible costs. The first thing I will say about this picture is, and this is from one of the fields out there, for turmeric fields actually, is that you look at these incredible looking insects, they are actually not bad for the crops. These insects eat the other insects which are causing the problem with the crop. So these are actually what we call beneficial insects, and they have all arrived. They've come back because there is no more poison to kill them off anymore, because you're not using chemicals, so therefore they won't die, right? And we need these insects around here, the grasshoppers. I grew up as a child in India, and in my homes, be it in Delhi or elsewhere, closer to the farms from Rajasthan. And one of the memories is there were always dragonflies. Wherever there was water, even where there was not, there were dragonflies. And that was when I was a child. But then for the next 40 years, I didn't see dragonflies in India. Now when I go to my friends in Andhra Pradesh, my God, you have to keep pushing them apart. I mean, there are dragonflies everywhere. So that is a sign that the ecology is recovering, that nature is coming back as a result of this farming. So you do farming right, you can get nature back as well. Not just, you don't have to do forest protection and wildlifing and all that, yeah. So that is the invisible benefit. Biodiversity comes back. But there is also another invisible benefit, which is the invisible costs are avoided. And here is some costs. These are some recent, I like British newspapers. I think they are much more balanced in their reporting. So I follow The Guardian and The Times, and these are actually from my uncle's home in UK. The Times and The Guardian online, both talking about the impacts of chemical farming. One talking about the importance of protecting children's health, and for that you need to ban pesticides, they are saying. And the other one is talking about the increasing evidence that certain chemicals, and I specifically refer to glyphosates. I think we have all used Roundup, Monsanto Roundup. Glyphosates, my friend, is dangerous. So if it is not used carefully, if you are in contact with it, it can lead to cancer. It's used here too, yeah. We have this problem in India as well. In fact, in Punjab, where it is used so much, very sad to say this, that there is a train which goes from Punjab to Rajasthan, which is my home state. And why? Because in Rajasthan, they have India's best cancer hospital. And my friends, that train is called the cancer train. It has become such a problem that, can you imagine, the name of the train amongst the people is cancer train, because you're going for treatment. Yeah. So common this is. So this is one of these. Now, thankfully, if you change the system, then you can avoid these costs. And these costs are real, right? They cost money. It's the health costs. You have to pay it or the government has to pay it. There is a cost. Somebody is paying for it, right? So, yeah, exactly, yeah. And these costs can be measured. So pesticides also create different forms of problems with human health. They affect the nervous system. So it's called endocrine disruption. There are impacts, neurological impacts, there are obesity impacts, there are premature deaths, and also male reproduction also gets affected. So men can get less potent as well. All of these have got medical costs to it. And the main drivers of these costs, number one, pesticides. Number two, plastics. So chemicals in plastics coming into our system, because the plastics go to the sea, the fish eat it, then we eat the fish, it comes back inside here, right? Number three is flame retardants and so on. But look at the big ones. The number one driver is pesticides, and the number one impact is on neurological impacts. And these are huge. These are, of course, European numbers, so they're very big. But the point is, it is expensive, and this cost is being avoided. So I come back to my three key points for you to remember. One is that sustainability is not just, I haven't hardly mentioned wildlife. I showed you some pictures of insects, right? But that's not really wild. So, but it is about sustainability. This is about agriculture and its role in sustainability, right? Innovation is not just about technology. This is very simple stuff that I'm describing here, right? And the main innovation here is using the women's self-help groups, so basically microfinance people, in Andhra Pradesh, using that network to broadcast this, and then recognizing that, okay, if you move someone to another farm, he or she has to be paid a salary. So find some donors. So it is all social innovation that is actually driving this. And the third point is that there are techniques, and we can apply them, and the benefits are real, and they can be measured. The costs are real, and avoiding them can be measured as well. So this is my invitation to you. Now I invite you, sir, and all of you, if you want, come to this place, come to Andhra Pradesh. And if I can convince him, I would love to have Vijay Kumar himself come and do the next talk. So it's very dissatisfying for me to be saying all this on behalf of somebody else, right? So he's my friend. He'll come here if you invite him. So that is my suggestion. Yes, okay. And finally, the key takeaways, right? One is, this is replicable, right? So I've given you example, which is the third item on the list on the top, which is ZBNF in Andhra Pradesh. By the way, there's a state in India, a small one, which is about 65,000 farmers, called Sikkim. They are 100% organic already. There is a company called Sechem in Egypt, which is a commercial enterprise, 100% organic. They produce 20 million tons of fertilizer. They are following the system of converting biomass and bio-waste into fertilizer. 20 million tons per year of producing compost. They are like a compost factory, more or less. Second point, soil health. As I said, when I ask the questions, what is better? Health. What kind of health? Soil health, farmer health, and citizens' health. That is what is a big change. Third point is SDGs can be approved through sustainable agriculture. And this is really where we need to think again, because we are not getting this. Fourth point is about social innovation, that the only solution for small farms is actually economically stronger small farms. So we need to focus on that. We need to give them the ability to be more successful, more productive, sustainably. And finally, my hope is that natural farming can be part of your future as well. Because if we follow this and we follow my concern, not everything is perfect according to me, right? As I mentioned to you, the branding and the marketing is not there. I'm hoping that you will do a better job than my friends of branding and marketing. Yeah. Your command of English is much, much better than theirs, I can tell you that. You're much closer to the Western marketplace than they are out there in AP, right? So I'm expecting you to do much better on this front as well. Because think of the benefits. It's not just for the farmer, it's about the food processor. If you manufacture here, brand here, it's about the income for the brand manager, income for the marketing people and the advertising people, and finally for the exporters. Right? So the whole value chain, the forward integration, all the way from farming, which of course is here, to food processing, to branding, to marketing, to exporting. All of these are different incomes. They will add to the GDP, they will add to employment. This is where the new economies of the future will come from. I wish you all the best in this endeavor. Thank you.